$300 million. Rejected. The corporation that slammed doors in her face when she was 16 came crawling back with the largest athletic contract in Philippine history. Alex Eala stared at the paperwork, remembering every dismissive email, every condescending handshake, every suit who told her she wasn't marketable enough. Now they wanted her signature. Now they needed her legitimacy. But some wounds cut too deep for zeros on a check to heal. Alexandra Eala wasn't born into tennis royalty. She clawed her path from Quezon City courts, where nets sagged and dreams stretched thin. While American prodigies trained in air-conditioned academies with biomechanics analysts monitoring every stroke, Alex practiced under Manila's scorching humidity, her family scrambling to fund tournaments abroad. At 8 years old, Globe Telecom took a gamble on a kid with fire in her eyes, her first endorsement. Not millions, not hundreds of thousands, just enough belief to keep fighting. By 16, she'd conquered junior circuits across Europe. The 2022 U.S. Open Girls Singles Championship made her the first Filipino to capture a junior Grand Slam singles crown. Headlines erupted. Philippines basketball fanatics suddenly discovered tennis. Brands that ignored her existence began circling. But one corporation, let's call them Titan Sports, a multinational equipment giant worth billions, saw something else entirely. Opportunity without obligation. Exploitation dressed as negotiation. Their representatives flew to Spain, where Alex trained at Rafael Nadal's academy. Polished executives with rehearsed smiles presented an exciting partnership opportunity. Translation: use her Filipino heritage to penetrate Southeast Asian markets while paying pennies compared to what they showered on Western athletes. The offer? A 3-year equipment sponsorship worth $180,000 total, $60,000 annually for a Grand Slam champion whose face could sell millions in rackets, shoes, apparel across archipelagos from Manila to Jakarta. Alex's father, Michael, a former collegiate player himself, studied the contract. Her mother, Riza, an ex-national swimmer who understood athletic exploitation intimately, shook her head. The terms were suffocating. Titan Sports would own her image rights, dictate her tournament schedule, control every social media post. They'd position her as their diversity ambassador, while actual investment remained microscopic. When the Eala family requested fair compensation matching her achievements, Titan's tone shifted. Negotiations became lectures about gratitude and realistic expectations for someone from the Philippines. The rejection email arrived 48 hours later. Professional, dismissive, final. After careful consideration, we've decided to pursue partnerships more aligned with our current brand strategy. We wish Alexandra the best in her future endeavors. Translation: we thought you'd accept scraps because you're desperate. Since you demanded respect, you're expendable. That night, 16-year-old Alex cried in her dormitory. Not from losing money, her family managed, from the humiliation, from understanding that talent alone wouldn't shatter certain ceilings. Corporate gatekeepers who'd never swung a racket competitively held veto power over her legitimacy. They'd measured her worth not by her championship trophies, but by their projected return on investment, and apparently, a Filipina teenager wasn't lucrative enough to treat fairly. She posted nothing publicly, maintained professionalism, but the lesson seared itself into her identity. Prove them catastrophically wrong. What Alex didn't know was that Titan Sports would soon regret that rejection more than any business decision in their 70-year history. 4 years transformed doubt into inevitability. Alex Eala didn't just improve, she detonated every ceiling constructed around her potential. The 2025 season became her masterpiece. Miami Open, March 2025. She dismantled 5-time Grand Slam champion Iga Świątek in straight sets, advancing to the semifinals of a WTA 1000 tournament. Not a fluke, not luck, surgical precision that left commentators speechless. Swiatek, the Polish powerhouse who dominated women's tennis, couldn't solve Eala's aggressive baseline attacks. Match point. Alex crushed a forehand winner down the line, dropped her racket, and screamed skyward. Filipino fans, tens of thousands who had traveled to Florida, erupted. The Philippines, a basketball-obsessed nation, suddenly couldn't discuss anything except this 20-year-old destroying tennis royalty. Sponsors noticed. Nike expanded their partnership. Babolat designed signature rackets. Bank of the Philippine Islands launched nationwide campaigns featuring her face. But more importantly, markets shifted. Television ratings for WTA matches in Southeast Asia quadrupled whenever Eala competed. Merchandise bearing her name sold out within hours. The demographic Titan sports, once considered not strategic enough, now represented tennis's fastest-growing consumer base. Eastbourne, June 2025. Alex reached her first WTA Tour final, becoming the first Filipina to accomplish this feat. Though she fell to Daria Katsinka in the championship match, the £57,000 prize money paled beside the statement she delivered. Philippine tennis wasn't a novelty. It was legitimate. It was here. Wimbledon followed. The championships, tennis's most prestigious stage, where grass courts whispered with a century of tradition. First-round exit against defending champion Barbora Krejcikova didn't diminish her arrival. Nike gifted her a custom hair tie shaped like sampaguita blossoms, the Philippines' national flower. That accessory became iconic, photographed globally, selling replicas faster than manufacturers could produce them. Guadalajara, September 2025, WTA 125 Singles Championship. Alex conquered the tournament, etching her name as the first Filipina to win a WTA Challenger-level event. Another record shattered, another milestone proving the naysayers catastrophically miscalculated. Her career prize money surpassed $1.1 million. Rankings climbed to world number 29 by March 2026. Indian Wells, where she reached the fourth round, Miami Open again, duplicating that success. Every victory tightened the noose around Titan's sports marketing department. Internal emails leaked years later revealed panic. Their Southeast Asian division hemorrhaged market share to competitors who'd partnered with Eala. Babolat's Pure Arrow racket, Alex's weapon of choice, became the region's best-selling model. Nike's Eala-inspired limited edition shirt, designed by Filipino artist Georgina Camus, sold out in 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Meanwhile, Titan Sports' regional sales collapsed. Their brand ambassadors, athletes they'd signed instead of Alec, generated minimal engagement. Social media campaigns flopped. Retail partnerships weakened. The Filipino market they'd once dismissed now represented 40% of projected growth in Asian tennis equipment sales, and they'd lost access entirely. Board members demanded answers. Marketing executives scrambled. The question haunting corporate meetings became unavoidable. How do we fix the Alex Eala mistake? The answer they devised would become sports business folklore, an offer so outrageous it made headlines before Alec even responded. February 2026, Titan Sports' new CEO, Richard Ashford, personally flew to Abu Dhabi during the WTA 500 Mubadala Open. Alec was competing, drawing stadium-filling crowds that organizers hadn't anticipated. Ashford watched from a luxury box as Filipino fans, thousands who traveled internationally, transformed the venue into Manila's atmosphere. Chants, flags, energy that sponsors craved. After her quarterfinal victory against Yekaterina Alexandrova, Ashford requested a private meeting. Not through agents, not through formal channels. He ambushed her post-match, introducing himself in the players' lounge with champagne he'd smuggled past security. Alec, exhausted and focused on recovery, reluctantly agreed to hear his pitch. The contract Ashford presented wasn't a partnership. It was colonization disguised as reparation. $300 million over 10 years, $30 million annually, positioning her among tennis's highest-paid athletes financially. The numbers dazzled initially. Nike's deal with Federer was $300 million across a decade. Titan Sports was matching that for someone still climbing rankings. On paper, vindication. In reality, acquisition. The terms revealed intentions. Titan Sports wanted comprehensive control, exclusive equipment rights, image licensing across all platforms, mandatory appearances at corporate events quarterly, creative approval over her social media content, and yes, most invasively, relocation requirements. They'd dictate which tournament she entered based on their marketing priorities, not her competitive strategy. The contract essentially purchased her autonomy, wrapping exploitation in unprecedented dollar figures. Ashford's sales pitch dripped with revisionist history. "We've always believed in your potential, Alexandra. That earlier conversation was simply about timing. We're prepared now to make this partnership historic." The gaslighting was breathtaking. He'd rewritten their rejection as strategic patience, their dismissiveness as prudent evaluation. Alex's agent, Maria Gonzalez, studied the contract with increasing alarm. This isn't a sponsorship, it's indentured servitude with a massive price tag. Titan Sports would own her likeness perpetually, even post-contract. They'd control documentary rights, biographical content, even potential coaching ventures after retirement. The financial compensation was enormous, but the soul cost was incalculable. Filipino media caught wind of negotiations. Headlines exploded. Eala offered record-breaking $300 million deal. Fans celebrated prematurely. Basketball legend and Alex's uncle, Alex Eala, cautioned publicly, "Read the fine print. Money means nothing if it costs your freedom." Titan Sports launched a preemptive PR campaign, leaking negotiations to business outlets, positioning themselves as magnanimous benefactors, rescuing a struggling athlete. The narrative was fiction. Alex wasn't struggling. Her 2025 earnings exceeded $650,000 in prize money alone, with existing sponsorships providing substantial additional income. She was ascending independently. Titan Sports needed her far more desperately than she needed their billions. Internal pressure mounted. Richard Ashford scheduled follow-up meetings, each more insistent. He flew to Dubai, then Indian Wells, shadowing her tournament schedule. The persistence became harassment. Other brands whispered warnings through industry channels. Titan Sports was notorious for suffocating athletes beneath contractual restrictions, prioritizing corporate interests over competitive welfare. Alec requested 72 hours to decide, 3 days to weigh generational wealth against professional autonomy. 3 days to determine whether that teenage rejection still burned hot enough to justify walking away from 9 figures. 3 days where every Filipino pundit, sports columnist, and social media commentator offered unsolicited opinions about what she should do. Her response would either redefine her legacy or haunt her career forever. No pressure. March 15, 2026. Alex Eala called a press conference in Indian Wells, California, immediately following her 4th-round appearance. Media assumed she'd announced the Titan Sports partnership. Instead, she detonated their corporate fantasy publicly. "I'm declining Titan Sports' $300 million offer." Her voice was steady, rehearsed, lethal. 4 years ago, when I won the U.S. Open Girls Singles Championship, they told me I wasn't worth investing in fairly. They offered $60,000 annually with terms that would have controlled my entire career. When my family asked for respect, they rejected me via email. Journalists erupted. Questions overlapped. Alec continued, undeterred. "Now, I'm ranked in the top 30 globally. I've defeated Grand Slam champions. I've reached WTA finals. Suddenly, I'm worth $300 million to them." But here's the reality they're not advertising. Their contract doesn't just sponsor me, it purchases me. They dictate my tournament schedule, control my social media, own my image perpetually. I'd become their marketing asset, not an independent athlete. She paused, letting the bombshell settle. cameras clicked relentlessly. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much, and overcome too many barriers to surrender my autonomy for any price. My career belongs to me, the Philippines, and everyone who believed in me when corporations dismissed me. Titan Sports can keep their $300 million. I'll earn my legacy without them. The room exploded. Richard Ashford, watching via livestream from Titan Sports headquarters, reportedly smashed his laptop. The stock market responded within hours as investors recognized the PR catastrophe. Social media became a wildfire of support. Hashtag #RespectAla trended globally. Filipino pride swelled into nationalism. Athletes across sports applauded her courage publicly. Nike responded within 24 hours, restructuring their existing partnership with enhanced terms respecting her independence. Babolat followed, increasing their commitment without demanding creative control. Wilson, yes, the same Wilson previously linked to fake news about Alec, issued a legitimate offer, competitive compensation without the suffocating restrictions Titan demanded. The contrast was instructive. Legitimate brands respected boundaries. Desperate corporations demanded submission. Alec had distinguished between partners and predators, choosing dignity over desperation. But consequences materialized quickly. Titan Sports launched a smear campaign through industry insiders, suggesting Alec was difficult to work with and ungrateful for opportunities offered. Anonymous sources fed gossip column stories about her being financially advised poorly and missing out on generational wealth. The retaliation was predictable, pathetic, and entirely expected. Alec's parents faced criticism from Filipinos who couldn't comprehend rejecting such money. She could have secured her family's future for generations. Comment sections filled with accusations of pride overtaking practicality. Some questioned whether refusing $300 million demonstrated principles or stupidity. But younger athletes, the teenagers grinding on ITF circuits, the college players dreaming of professional careers, understood immediately. Alec had established a precedent. Talent deserves fair treatment regardless of origin. Corporations couldn't exploit desperation anymore, couldn't lowball athletes from emerging markets, assuming they'd accept any offer. Her rejection elevated standards industry-wide. Serena Williams tweeted support, "Knowing your worth is priceless. Proud of Alec." Naomi Osaka posted, "Some things matter more than money. Respect." The tennis community rallied around someone who prioritized integrity over income, principles over profit. Titan Sports quietly withdrew from Southeast Asian markets 6 months later, unable to recover credibility. Their regional division dissolved. Hundreds of jobs vanished because corporate arrogance misread one teenage resolve 4 years prior. Within weeks of her public rejection, sponsorship paradigms shifted across women's sports. Brands recognized that athletes from non-traditional markets weren't desperate, they were discerning. The old playbook of offering minimal compensation while demanding maximum control became obsolete overnight. Alex Eala had rewritten negotiations permanently. Adidas approached her with a proposal respecting her autonomy, competitive financial terms without image rights colonization, flexibility in tournament scheduling, creative input on product designs inspired by Filipino culture. She signed within weeks. The partnership announcement emphasized collaboration, not ownership. Adidas shares jumped 3% as investors recognized they'd captured the athlete Titan Sports fumbled catastrophically. Other Filipino athletes benefited immediately. Gymnast Carlos Yulo, fresh off Olympic golds, leveraged Alex's precedent to negotiate historically favorable endorsement terms. Weightlifter Heidelin Diaz renegotiated existing contracts, removing exploitative clauses sponsors had buried in fine print. The ripple effect extended beyond Philippines. Southeast Asian athletes across sports began demanding equitable treatment, citing the Eala standard. But the most profound impact manifested in grassroots tennis. Donations flooded Philippine tennis academies from Filipinos worldwide who'd watched Alex reject corporate disrespect. Courts were built in provinces that had never hosted tournaments. Equipment grants reached kids whose families couldn't afford rackets. The Rafael Nadal Academy in Spain created scholarship programs specifically for Southeast Asian juniors, inspired by Alex's journey, proving their potential. Teen players on ITF circuits began wearing bracelets with DOP printed, dignity over profit. The phrase became a movement. When brands approached young athletes with predatory contracts, they'd reference the Eala rejection, demanding revisions or walking away. 15-year-olds negotiating first sponsorships possessed a leverage their predecessors never imagined, because one 20-year-old Filipina had shown that standing firm worked. Titan Sports attempted rehabilitation. They hired diversity consultants, published corporate responsibility statements, donated to tennis development programs in Asia. Too late. The damage was irreversible. Their brand became synonymous with exploitation. Retailers in Manila removed their products from shelves. Online campaigns urged boycotts. The financial consequences of dismissing Alex Eala in 2022 ultimately cost them over $2 billion in lost revenue, dissolved partnerships, and collapsed market share. Richard Ashford resigned under pressure 9 months after the rejection, his tenure defined by spectacular misjudgment. Industry analysts labeled the Eala situation the costliest corporate miscalculation in sports business history. Business schools began teaching case studies about recognizing athlete value beyond immediate rankings, about respecting partnerships over transactional relationships. Alex, meanwhile, continued ascending. Dubai Championships quarterfinals, Madrid Open second round, Wimbledon preparations. Her focus remained singular. Winning mattered more than corporate drama, but her influence transcended courts. Universities invited her for lectures about athlete empowerment. United Nations Youth Assembly requested her participation in discussions about economic exploitation in sports. The teenager corporations once dismissed as not marketable enough had become sports business's most influential figure, not despite rejecting $300 million, but because she rejected it. Her bank account remained comfortable, not extravagant. Her legacy became invaluable. Critics who'd questioned her decision grew silent as her career flourished independently. Those who'd called her foolish for refusing generational wealth failed to comprehend that some legacies require sacrifice, some principles demand protection, and some dignities cannot be purchased. 2 years after the rejection, Alex Eala sits at world number 12, her highest ranking yet. She's captured 3 WTA titles, reached 2 Grand Slam quarterfinals, and accumulated over $8 million in career prize money. Her endorsement portfolio, Adidas, Nike accessories, Babolat, Globe, BPI, and locally, generates $12 million annually, respectful partnerships that enhance rather than constrain her career. But numbers barely scratch the surface of her impact. The Eala effect reshapes how corporations approach athlete partnerships globally. Fair compensation isn't charity anymore, it's expectation. Creative control isn't negotiable, it's standard. Athletes from smaller nations aren't undervalued automatically. They're evaluated on merit, not market preconceptions. Filipino kids who'd never considered tennis now flood academies nationwide. Parents who'd steered children toward basketball or boxing suddenly invest in rackets and lessons. The sports infrastructure improves exponentially. Courts, coaching programs, tournament hosting. Philippines Tennis Association membership quadruples. The pipeline Alex created will produce the next generation of champions who won't face the barriers she demolished. Titan Sports never recovered. The corporation exists diminished, their Asian operations abandoned, their reputation permanently stained. The $300 million they offered Alex would have been their salvation. Her partnership could have rehabilitated their image, restored market access, validated their renewed commitment to diversity. Instead, their arrogance cost them everything. The teenager they rejected at 16 had sealed their irrelevance by 20. Some still argue Alex sacrificed financial security unnecessarily. She could have negotiated better terms within the contract, they claim. She could have taken the money and used it philanthropically. These critics miss the fundamental point. Capitulation, disguised as compromise, still surrenders power. Sometimes the only appropriate response to disrespect is absolute rejection, regardless of cost. Her parents faced the hardest criticism, sacrificing their daughter's potential wealth because of pride. But Michael and Riza Ayla understood something critics didn't. They'd raised a champion, not a commodity. Alex's worth couldn't be measured by corporate valuations. Her dignity couldn't be purchased with 9 figures. Teaching her to demand respect would serve her longer than any endorsement check. The story resonates beyond sports. Young professionals negotiate salaries referencing the Ayla standard, knowing their value, demanding respect, and walking away when offered exploitation. Women across industries cite her rejection when confronting gender-based pay inequity. The narrative transcends tennis, becoming a parable about self-worth in capitalist systems designed to undervalue certain populations. Alex herself rarely discusses the rejection publicly anymore. She said what needed saying. Her focus remains tennis, climbing rankings, capturing Grand Slams, representing Philippines on sport's biggest stages. But occasionally, in quiet moments after victories, she remembers 16-year-old Alex reading that dismissive email from Titan Sports. She remembers crying, doubting, questioning whether she'd ever be considered enough. Then she glances at the trophy in her hands, the crowds cheering her name, the Filipino flags waving throughout stadiums worldwide, and she knows she was always enough. The corporations were insufficient. Alex Eala didn't just reject $300 million. She rejected the system that told her to be grateful for scraps. She proved that dignity, autonomy, and self-respect matter more than any corporate contract. She transformed not just her career, but the entire landscape of athlete negotiations worldwide. Her legacy isn't measured in dollars declined, but barriers destroyed. 16-year-old Alex couldn't have imagined 20-year-old Alex would change sports business forever, but that's exactly what happened when one Filipina refused to be purchased. Was it worth it? Let history and her future Grand Slam titles answer that question. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in Alex Eala's historic journey. Hit that notification bell because this story is far from finished. She's just getting started.